Impuritas, Civitalis. The worst threats await us in this one. The time is finally here. As for the first of these threats, they have been mentioned a few times previously. Now, what is an Impurita Civitalis? Well, it's Latin, meaning civil impurity, or impurity of the city, implying that something is wrong with what this is called, where it's seen as unclean and wrong. In a totalitarian state, this is determined as anything that doesn't fit the ideology or even the whims of whoever is on top. In the context of the city, it's anything that is worse than a starve the city threat. Which, while it's dangerous, the starve the city I mean, it's not considered too dangerous for most legitimate forces within the city. An Impurita Civitalis requires more specialized powers to take care of. I'll cover what the true meaning of Impuritas Civitalis is in this city. In this video, as for the rest of this law section, it will be after this one. The library will certainly have its work cut out for it, as it cuts, slices, and bashes any that would find a way inside the library, for whatever purpose. Let's start this with the Hana Association. They are the association that's in charge of the other associations. Their role is to grade all fixers, offices, and the hazards within the city. They're also those that give it's where the prospective fixers need to go in order to get a fixer license, in order to be able to work as a fixer legally. They also award colours to those grade 1 fixers that impress them sufficiently. Examples so far include the Red Mist, who, while she was a berserker at times, she's one of the most morally sound people within the city. And those are rarer in the city than individuals for whom education does mean intelligence in a place known for its intellectual flatulence. Then we have someone on the other end of that spectrum, the Blue Reverberation. Someone who's just missing clown makeup to look the part. Yeah, I think that sums it up nicely. The Purple Tear, well, it's unclear what her plan was, although I suspect that it's not done yet, as she's capable of looking ahead into alternative possibilities. It's likely that she has other plans set up before she entered the library. Then we have the Black Silence, who has a more complicated history. As for the Hana Association regarding the library investigation, they were put in charge of it after they called off the Lu Association's involvement. This was before Zhao and the Southern Branch, Section 1, went into the library. this association has an ability unique to all the others. They use the 4 Taoist Trigrams, which are visible on the South Korean flag. The first of these is Gyeon, which means heaven, which increases power to the one that uses this, which will allow them to strike down from the heavens harder than they otherwise would without it. The second of these is Gong, which means earth, which increases protection both to HP and stagger damage to the one that uses this. The earth is resilient, and those that try to harm it will find out the hard way that it will punish this foolishness. The third of these is Gam, which means water, which gives the user of this one light. Water cleanses and gives life, and with that extra bit of light, it might give that Hana fixer a greater ability to take the beating, or possibly dish it out a little harder. Finally, we have Ri, which means fire, which gives a page to the user of this. Yes, fire brings warmth, but it also destroys, which is especially true if the page granted is something that is needed at a particular moment. Yes, a combat page, to be more precise. Each of these trigrams need to be used before a fresh set is given to the Hana fixer that has this. Also, Hana means one in Korean. These fixers are at the top of the fixer hierarchy, so these are the strongest of all the fixers. They are the elites, armed with what looks like shape-shifting crystalline weapons. They must have an exclusive contract with a high-grade workshop to have those. Well, they can certainly afford to have them. Yeah, pay for them, rather. And speaking of these elite fixers, first we have Mirenae. She is the director of Hana Association Southern Branch Section 3. She has a deceptive appearance that hides her true power. She is a true professional and is quite serious. She doesn't around, although she can extend her use of the trigrams to another, which is good to have and shows that she looks after her own. According to her, there are 12 fixer associations. They are the Hana Association. I've already mentioned what they deal with. The Refi Association, which means two in German. They deal with peacekeeping and private security. The Taoist Association, which means free in Spanish. They deal with workshops and make sure that the gear made by them is approved for use by fixers. The Shi Association, which means four in Japanese, they are the assassination and subtle operations specialists. The Cinq Association, which means five in French, what they do is currently unknown. The Liu Association, which means six in Mandarin, well, Some kind of Chinese dialect, anyway. They specialize in all-out assault and war. The 7 Association, which is in English, obviously, they specialize in information gathering that the other associations might need. The Refi Association, which means 8 in Swiss German, they're basically glorified lawyers. They take care of transactions, deals, disputes, and also they look at contracts to make sure that things are in order. Okay. They're not just glorified lawyers, they're also glorified accountants. As for the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th associations, they're currently unknown, possibly for similar reasons why the full list of starship classes in Star Trek is left deliberately vague. The reason for this? So that those responsible for design can make new starship classes if and when it's needed for the plots. I imagine that Project Moon has a similar reason for leaving out certain details regarding the other associations. They also do what was mentioned earlier about grading fixers, rating threat levels, giving out fixer licenses. They also hand out the official documents regarding specific requests. They also make those that impress them, those grade 1s, that impress them rather, colours. Although as far as the rating system is concerned, there's one rating that can't be determined by the Hana Association, and that rating is impurity. Yeah, now you're getting why I was saving that for this bit. That rating is determined by the head. She believes that impurities are those that defile the city. The head deals with these impurities by banishing them to the outskirts. The clockwork teeth is one example, as it's likely an AI with organic parts. Either that, or something so powerful that it couldn't be contained by most fixers within the city, and so the outskirts were where they ended up. She thinks that the head manages that threat level as things like the ethics of the city aren't subjects that the Hana Association, or indeed any other fixer, are qualified to discern. Ethics! Mirenae. That's what they call the toilet paper that they've wiped their with. They're amoral psychopaths at best and sadistic killers at worst. Even though one of their number has somewhat reformed, leaving them in charge of determining ethics is like putting a manager of a greasy spoon joint in charge of a Michelin star restaurant. Standards would drop like a rock made of osmium, if they existed at all. Next we have Harold. Now, this one might look like a bloke, but has a feminine voice. Now, there are 4 possibilities to why this is I can think of. The first one is, this is a bloke that's, well, either more effeminate or has more estrogen than there normally is. 2, this is a woman that doesn't feel the need to be feminine looking. The third possibility is Harold is in the middle of some gender reassignment process involving genetic manipulation. which is possible considering that cloning with accelerated growth has been demonstrated, along with the possibility of Iori, the purple tear, having some genetic augmentations done to look as healthy as she was for someone that should be old enough to be someone's grandmother. The fourth possibility is Harold is just non-binary. All that is certain is Harold does not have a feminine voice. This is not a mistake on the developer's side of it. Let's move on. Harold sees how impurities are different to stars of the city, possibly because they disrupt the city's order. AI certainly do that, as the mechanical rebellion that possibly allowed the head and the other wings to take over. That certainly happened. Which used to be bad news for Angela. Basically, if anything that the head sees is, well, something that would disrupt the nightmarish ideal of the city, something which stars of the city don't, as they exist around the people of the city, as the wishes, the dreams, and the determination of such people as they shine brighter than all the others, guiding others towards that ideal, while most focus on the ground rather than what's above. As for the regular Hana fixer, even the standard Hana Association fixer is stronger than most. Each association has a specific mentality that reflects it. Some are passionate, like the Liu Association. Some are quiet and cold, like the Shi Association. Some are sticklers to a procedure, like the Zwei Association. Yeah, I know, that means two in German, but a German-style attitude as well. The Hana Association represents the basics of a fixer attitude. In other words, their attitude is the vanilla attitude, which is concentration and resoluteness in all situations, to adapt to the flow when it occurs. And not be swept aside. They secure values while adjusting the outdated parts of their ideologies, if and when it's needed. They have some degree of having an open mind regarding the opinions of others. To a degree. For example, they can listen to and acknowledge criticism, but they don't accept all opinions, as some are contradictory. They change when they need to, whatever is needed, but they maintain rules. Temptation and deception is best avoided. The principles of the Hana also applies to the mindset of any fixer, even though they have different specializations. As for the story, it picks up with the Hana Association Southern Branch, Section 3, meeting up within its meeting room. Mirenae asked if they've read the report in advance. The report mentioning that Hana Association was in charge of matters regarding the library from that point onwards. Harold saw that the library was a star of the city, at least as far as they were aware, which had become a target for the Hana Association, ordinarily a tough prospect for whoever it was aimed at. Apparently, director Mirenae was right about her predictions, and Mirenae criticised Harold for not getting that much, not thinking that they'd last long. She then turned her attention to Olivier's faults, which she believed were complicated. Olivier. Ah, yes, as in the one who was the reason why Roland didn't die along with Angelica and the others during the pianist incident. He was surprised that Roland was inside the library after going missing. Olivier, he wasn't missing. He accepted Iori's offer, whatever that was. And besides, how did you know he was in there in the first place? Yeah, that is suspicious. Anyway, Mirenae asked if it would affect his job performance. He then spoke Roland's excuse that he got from his dead wife. That's that and this is this. Yeah, that's what he used to say. This was encouraging to Mirenae, as they had one purpose, to examine the relationship between the distortion and the library, and they're also not restricted with what conflicts they're allowed to enter into during this. The library is apparently, well, it's certainly among the top 5 stars of the city, based on what she was implying. Harold saw too few connections between them. They needed to observe the causality. The library was growing in strength, devouring any that enter it. Mirenae saw that it could consume the city at this rate, which was why they needed to figure it out, specifically how it functioned. She then wanted a recap of the current circumstances. Olivier spoke of the southern branch of the Refi Association suffering the loss of both Section 1 and 2. So its voice in the General Assembly will be small for a while, at least until they can get replacement fixes for those sections. Mirenae asked if they'll be passive to avoid retaliation from the fun. Passive, that's usually what the she would do before striking. Besides, Olivia mentioned that the Thumb are having problems as well, as one of their sotto-capos, Calo, disappeared along with his capos, which is a good thing for the Refi Association, considering their own problems. Harold identified the only sizable threat remaining in Elcorp's nest is, and Olivier confirms that it's them. Who is them? Well, Mirenae hinted that the library was nearing completion as the fog surrounding Elcorp's nest, that was making navigation difficult, was clearing. Them being Argalia and his reverberation ensemble. They were camped around the library, telling any who gets close to it to off if they don't kill them first. Olivia noted that distortions were highly concentrated there. This led to Mirenae declaring the reverberation ensemble, including the mercury-poisoned Regency dandy himself, to be a Star of the City-level syndicate. Olivia believes that he went mad since he lost Angelica. No, Olivier. He was mad since his experimentation during childhood. It was the pianist incident that made him snap completely. Mirenae understood that much, as the pianist left an indelible twisted mark on the city that day. It's why Roland is on the path he's still taking. Harold then asked how things would operate. Mirenae answered by saying that Section 3 would be focusing on the library to get as many books as possible and secure distortions from the nest. She was also requesting that all Grave 1 fixer officers hunt down the blue reverberation. Oh, so it took the death of the Refi Association's Southern Branch manager, who had it coming, by the way, the attacking of Refi Association Section 1, and causing trouble to be marked for death. Olivier asked about Sections 1 and 2. Well, Harold mentioned that Section 1 was hunting the blue reverberation down, and Section 2 was taking care of the investigation regarding the 8 chefs. Well, Greta was one of them, so she's at least accounted for. Mirenae gave them an update. Section 1 was wiped out by the blue reverberation. So the Vermilion Cross was being sent to take care of him. They're clearly desperate, and I'm guessing that this colour fixer was called that due to them wielding a cross. Olivier found this hard to believe, nor could Harold believe how strong Argalia was. Well, believe it. He could probably give the Red Mist at her strongest a challenge. And she died taking out an Arbiter and 2 claws, never mind the rest of what she had to fight through. Those would probably make the best of the Hana Association seem like a bunch of organ-harvesting rats. Then Mirenae updated them on Section 2 status. They fared better. Unfortunately, the 8 chefs are no more, as 7 of the chefs were found cooked when they were found. Well, what's left of them anyway, was mutilated beyond recognition. Olivier asked about the last one. Mirenae said that she went missing. Harold asked if the last one betrayed their peers and cooked them. Mirenae didn't think so, as while they do cook humans... Oh great, all 8 of them are cannibals. They prefer to cook full-course meals, not a buffet. Me. Greta killed them all, because she didn't want the competition. Mirenae declared that this star of the city had fallen, self-destructed in this case, although she believed that it was interference from the outside. Wrong! Harold asked who was behind the dissolution of these cannibals. Olivia asked if it could be... And then Mirenae stated that Section 2 believed that the Reverberation Ensemble might be responsible. Well, she's not wrong about that, as Greta was with them. Olivia saw the Hana Association's assumptions about Argadia's schemes aren't even close to what he's plotting. Mirenae then went on to speak of multiple incidents of abnormal scale happening in the southern quarter of the city, although worse events have happened in the past, likely referring to the Mechanical Rebellion being one of them. But the frequency and convolutions of this situation clearly stood out, certainly enough to have every association in a state of emergency. Distortions have caused losses with the southern branches of the Therese and Cinq associations, Ooh, that'll set workshops back for a while with the former. And according to the Seven Association, this was due to the Blood Red Knight and L'air de Loup. Oh, so a vampire and a werewolf. Great. As if there weren't enough problems in this city where it's Halloween every day. Well, close enough anyway. According to Harold, those two, along with the puppeteer, have become a greater threat. And yesterday's promise can also teleport in such a way that it makes W Corp's singularity look more like a pedal bike compared to his Harley Davidson. Yeah, all Pluto is missing is misspelled tattoos. Mirenae doesn't see how that power should be what an individual should be allowed to possess. Interesting way of putting it. What an individual should be allowed to possess. She saw the distortion as defying what the city stood for until now. It's changing the atmosphere of the city. Oh, so it stands for pain, cruelty, amorality, and emotional suffering. Sounds like it's not changing that much. But however it is changing, I doubt it's for the better. Olivier was asking if the head was doing anything about it. Well, it wasn't. Olivier, they're pretty hands-off usually. Unless someone makes an AI, someone infringes patents, or they don't pay their taxes, along with making effective firearms and having more than two of the same person in the city for a week in real time. In those cases, they send an arbiter or a claw usually. Mirenae noted how quiet they've been. It's possible that their superiors are deliberately withholding information on the head's activity. Yeah, that is possible, as it might be something that's on a need-to-know only basis. Harold at this point was asking if they might take their hands off the library case, depending on the circumstances. Mirenae says, "No! They're heading to the library. So it's time to get your in gear." Yeah, that's you, Harold, and the others. And at least according to Mirenae, they need to control the situation. Get unambiguous information about the library and its intentions. Section 4 has a lockdown on the nest of District 12 to keep the distortions made by the reverberation ensemble from going beyond it. Olivier asked if their superiors believed that Section 3 would be enough to take care of the library. Mirenae implies that they didn't know. As if it didn't work out, they were and the city would be more than it already is. The library will be seen as one of the freest beings of the city. Oh, so you believe that freedom is overrated? I actually feel sorry for you. She then thinks of the overnight office drones working during the coming doom. Then she told her fixers to get ready to move. What? You're expecting me to say something else? Before they left, Olivier wanted to talk with Mirenae after the meeting was over. And after hearing this, Roland was finding that it's hard to believe freest being in the city. This meant that Angela's goal was within reach. It feels even less real to Angela, even considering that the Hana Association was coming. She asks if they're the largest among the fixer associations. Roland confirmed this and reminded her of what their function was, although he added that they sometimes deal with stars of the city personally. He added that they'll be coming more often from that point onwards. Angela considered something strange, and Roland asked what that was. She then focused on the guests and told him and the other librarians to be prepared. Angela appeared to the silent Hana Association fixers and greeted them. Mirenae asked her if she knew that the library was visible from anywhere in Elcorp's nest now. Angela didn't know this. Harold told her that it would be possible to demolish the library from the outside soon, and Mirenae told her to make backup plans. Well, at least she's direct and to the point. She introduced herself by name and her position, shaking Angela's hand. The first time someone has done that. Mirenae confirmed that, as a star of the city, at least to her knowledge, the Hana Association will be appearing more often, warning her not to make it easy for them. Don't worry, the librarians won't. She told the others to shake her hand and do the same as her, and they did so. Angela hoped to be greeting them for a long time. Apparently, Olivier isn't going to fight this time, as he was only there to meet Angela. Olivier understood Angela wanted to know what was going on, and Mirenae told her that he just wanted a handshake. He then left. Mirenae then told Angela not to confuse this for a carefree attitude. They will not underestimate her and those within. She also has a countermeasure planned, although they treat her with due respect even so. They intend to bring down this star of the city. Angela then ushered them in, and they did not disappoint. Although the power of their techniques and crystalline weapons were considerable, it wasn't enough to withstand the librarians. All those that entered were turned into books, and their powers added to the library. After all that was over, Roland seemed disappointed that he didn't see Olivier in person. Angela noted that he knew one among them. He was expecting to meet an old friend of his, although he was thankful that he didn't. Although he still had to worry about Hana Association making a big deal out of this. Angela was asking if the city was breaking down. Roland didn't believe that it was, as the city carries on somehow. Yeah, after all the corpses that are piled up get eaten by the sweepers. Are there still enough of those to clear up the mess? As I don't think that District 23 and the rats will be enough to do that. As far as he's concerned, as long as the head stands, the city's nature won't change. Roland, that's the problem. Angela then asked what the head did. Roland saw them as having layers of secrecy. Nothing in great detail is known, although what is known is that they managed patents, mint currency, and authorized wings. The important factors that make the city function. They're certainly ruthless, both in dealing with those under their rule, and any that are even plotting to overthrow them. Never mind actually carrying that plot out. The head is the one in charge, the judgment bird. The eye observes the city, making sure that those that matters to them don't get any ideas. They are the big bird. The claw tears apart any considered guilty. They are the punishing bird. This is A, B, and C Corp, respectively. The arbiters are A Corp's enforcers, while the claws are C Corp's enforcers. Roland asked how she knew that. Angela spoke of the outskirts lab that the red mist was a part of. It fell due to the head. Kali killed Galleon, arbiter of the head and 2 claws, defending those that she could, but at the cost of her life. This required her to push herself beyond her limits and unleash everything she had. Angela believed that this couldn't be replicated. Roland could imagine how that would have looked. When the head declares something to be an impurity of the city, they send arbiters, beholders, who are the enforcers of B Corp, and claws to try and get rid of it. So what happened to that outskirts lab was standard procedure. Angela asked if something about that research was considered an impurity of the city. Well, the story didn't sit well with Roland. He heard it from Hode, who was an informant for the Eye, and asked that same question to her. As this was happening in the outskirts, or rather, it happened there, and not inside the city. Angela told him that he had no reason to doubt Hode's honesty. She doesn't know the reason either. Angela questioned if the head was being quiet because they're more or less looking at the state of the city and saying, "This is fine." Roland considered that possible, although they've not been visited by the head yet. She's curious to learn how that encounter would turn out. Roland was less eager, as drawing that much attention from the head would lower anyone's life expectancy. This was clearly the calm before the storm. And as for why that lab was attacked, it was likely due to a combination of the seed of light being worked on, and what they believed Aeon was planning on making, which ended up causing what they were trying to prevent. Although if they do see the library as a threat, they'd send their enforcers soon enough. What's coming next? You'd best start praying, as that particular action is quite relevant. Until next time. Hail the rabbit!